So, hey, Kevin, my name is Sunil. I am with Relevance, and we are a technology service provider, and I play the role of a client partner for financial services with Relevance. And it's great to meet you. It's my first podcast with the famous Kevin Olsen, the educator, turned into SVP. So I guess we can talk about your experience. But before that, I just wanted to give you a tidbit. The first time I started looking into financial services, I remember the first one of the first YouTube videos that I saw from you, where you were telling us about how $100 transaction goes through from a charging, if a customer goes in and charges, gives a credit card for $100 transaction, how it goes through all those channels and goes through the issuing bank and then the merchant's bank, how it goes through and who gets what. That was really fascinating for me. And before that, as a consumer, I was like, hey, this is where it is. I make the payment. I take my iPod and I just leave. But what happens after that is highly fascinating. And thanks for explaining all of that, Kevin.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the joys of making the YouTube videos, is being able to help people see behind the proverbial curtain of payments. Because most people think it's just like handing cash over one person to another. And cash, goes that quick. Every other transaction is complicated. And it's just it's how it's built into the industry. And if those are just transactions in the US, if you go crossing borders, it gets even much more complicated.
I see. Yeah, the number of institutions that are involved in just making that one small thing is mind-boggling, right? So it was really fascinating, and thanks for explaining that at a great length. So I'd like to ask you, Kevin, so what made you shift from an educator to what you're doing right now? Is it any different, or is education still involved in what you're doing right now, or is it a different role that you're playing?
Well, it is a little bit of both that are in there. A lot of it is because, you mentioned the Payments Professor YouTube channel, which I keep that up. I keep the website up because I once was in a position at a software company when I very started in payments, where people were giving me like ACH rules books and I'm trying to read them and I'm like, this makes no sense. How is anybody supposed to do this? I don't understand it. And then I had a mentor, a lady named Katie. She was wonderful. She would break things down. She actually said, put that book down. Let me explain it to you this way. And she would give me simple explanations. I was like, why didn't they just write it in the book that way? And she said, they can't. They can't, because it's got to be written to be able to show up, let's say, in court for, regulatory purposes. So it's written in that legalese type of language that it has to be for its purpose. And I decided there and then, I was like, I'm going to make education a lot easier and a lot more fun. Well, in doing that, in working in the education field and I was dedicated in it for years and helping people out, I started realizing too, I see some better ways we could do payments. And I had a couple conversations with a couple software organizations, and one said, you need to come work for us. And I was like, well, you know what? I kind of missed my software days. So I would like to do that. But I told them, I was like, I got all these ideas. I love being creative, but I don't want to stop doing what I do education-wise, because so many people, like you said, I watched this video and it helped me to understand that. And that's why I do it. When people tell me I saw this video and I've heard this, it helped me get a raise. It helped me get a better job. It helped me pass the AAP exam. I love that. That completely just makes my day so good when I hear I was able to help somebody else with that. So I told this company, I'm like, I'm not going to give this up. I may not be able to pay my bills with it, but if I'm going to work for you, I got to do this too. And they said, okay.
That's really good. It's a fascinating story, Kevin. There's so many terms that it's just mind-boggling. FIs, Fintechs, payment processors, and then payment facilitators, payment service providers. So many, right? So we're going through all of that, but what are some of the newer terms that people should be familiar with?
Well, what I do love is, as payments are evolving, The terminology is getting better. And I think a lot of that is because of all the pains we have had in the past with the different terms that are out there. And I even started an Instagram channel just because I can do a short video that just defines a single term. And we are seeing now, when we look at FedNow and we look at even RTP, they're very close in their terminology as well. Some of the terms that you really got to be the most familiar with is, well, operator. Operator tends to be one that is common. The operator is usually the entity that is in charge of the payment channel that is being used. For example, the clearinghouse is the operator for RTP. The clearinghouse is also the operator for the EPN or ACH network that the clearinghouse offers. Whereas we jump over to the Federal Reserve banks, they are the operator for Fed ACH. They are the operator for FedNow. So the operators are the ones that help to move the payments between what we call participants, at least in faster payments. They have different names and different payment channels, but in FedNow and RTP, there's some consistency in calling them a sending participant or a receiving participant. And then the consistency is also there in having a sender and a receiver. Terms people get. I mean, if I say you're the sender, people will be like, what? The sender of what? Well, the sender of the money. And what's the receiver? It's the receiver of the money. Who are the participants? Participants are financial institutions. They're the banks. They're the credit unions. Now, I do get asked a lot, why do we have to have the banks and credit unions involved? And that's where your security and soundness comes into play. By having the banks, the credit unions as the participants for sending, for receiving, it brings in some quality, some assurance, some security in knowing my payments are going to be able to take place. So we also call this the four corners model. Ironically, I know there's 5 participants, but the 4 corners model is where you have a sender, a sending participant, the operator who navigates and controls everything like air traffic control, and then the receiving participant and the receiver.
Gotcha. So these are the terms that are going to keep coming up all the time, over and over for anything.
There's one more that makes it fun. And that's what we call a TSP, because we abbreviate everything in electronic payments.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's a third-party service provider. A third-party service provider is extremely common within all payment channels, actually. And the easiest thing to think of as a third-party service provider is they help you get things done. They're another company, usually like a fintech, but could be another bank or credit union, but it's usually something like a fintech, a software company that provides a service that allows you to be able to, as a bank or credit union, offer those service, those types of payments, those options to your account holders.
Gotcha. Good. Thank you for that explanation. Now, as a consumer, I make so many payments, but I think the best payment experience that I have is using Zelle. I could just make those payments so quickly, and it gets settled so fast. Now, when it comes to the B2B side of it, it just takes a long time, and there's this settlement process that takes care, and it's just time consuming. Sometimes, the merchants get their money much later, right? At the same time, if there's money that needs to be transferred back to the consumer, that takes, when we listen to our merchants and they say, well, it could be weeks before you can receive your payment back, right? So why is it that complicated? And are there ways that the B2B payments also become as fast as Zelle?
Well, here's the thing. It only appears that settlement is taking place in Zelle in most cases. There are some cases it is immediate when it goes across the RTP network. But in most cases, you just have the appearance of the funds are there and can be spent. But it's not a guarantee. That's the catch. Now, Zelle's got some guarantees, some things that they do for their participants, but it's what the consumer sees. And that's what the consumer perception is, even if that's not the reality. Because like when we started talking, hey, payments are actually complicated for how they process. And when you compare consumer payments to business payments, the thing that we're looking at that makes a big difference is the rules and regulations governing each. There are much stricter, much tighter rules governing a consumer payment than there are a business payment. And another, what can be a huge differentiator, has to do with the amount of money involved. Consumer payments are generally much lower than business payments. So since there's different amounts of money, different rules and regulations that are in play, it causes, I want to say, chaos for how the payment actually gets processed, when it appears, how it appears. But you also mentioned the return or the refund type capability. In that case, a lot of it goes down to what payment channel was used, what payment channel is being used for the return, what does the agreement say, and a lot of people or the participants maybe that are involved, and now this isn't participant like we defined earlier, it's just somebody who's actually involved in this taking place, they hold on to the funds for as long as they can, because they use those funds to be able to make money. They want to make sure it's what we call good funds. In other words, they're not going to lose money. So everybody holds on to them for as long as they can until they have to release them. And it's a ridiculous amount of time in some cases. But I have to say too, it's advanced a lot. I mean, I got gray in my beard. Honestly, it's grown in there. I've given up on trying to dye it. It's just not going to happen. I can remember back in like my college days, if I got a check and I deposited a check, I had to physically go to the bank. There was no cell phone to take a picture of it with. And when I deposited it at the bank, it was days before it would show up and be available. A couple of times I had some high dollar checks. It was a couple of weeks in a couple of instances before that money was available. So it has improved over time, but there's still a long way to go. And that's where I believe a product like FedNow comes in, to where it is truly instant and truly settling at that time.
So that's a good segue to this next question that I have, was with FedNow. It is still in its infancy, right? It's still being adopted by a lot of banks. So if FedNow is such a good panacea for these payments and all that, and everybody's going to be satisfied with this, why is there reluctance in its adaptability? Why is it taking so long?
Well, okay, it is at this stage right now, not even 2 months old, as far as being live and available to the industry. So it is still extremely in its infancy. And there is some adaptability. There is traffic taking place at all hours. I can speak for, the Pidgin side of things. We've got people that are live on the network. We're seeing traffic go through. I've talked to colleagues at the Fed. They're telling me all kinds of traffic's going through. That, in fact, told me about a credit union today that full-on launched the send capability to all their account holders, and they're seeing high volumes of traffic going through. But I think what's slowing down the adoption is, first of all, I even told a friend of mine at the Fed that this product would be more successful if it didn't have the word Fed in it. If it just said instant payment now, or payment now, or anything pay fast, that equates to that, but not the word Fed, because there's some negative connotations that go with that. And there were some politicians that were misinformed and caused a great mass misinformation of saying FedNow is a CBDC. It is not. It is not a CBDC, not even close to it. But because of that misinformation, because of the fear of the unknown of what it really, and not, taking the time to look at real sources. I've argued with some of these people on the internet, and I'm like, cite your source. They don't have one. I can show the sources that are out there. You can go learn about this to realize it is not tracking your money. It is not a CBDC. It does not take away your cash. Once those fears are overcome, once it's offered, like in the example I said of the credit union, they're not using the name FedNow. They're calling it more like instant payments. People are like, wait, instant payments, I want that. But you throw in the word Fed, and they're like, whoa, wait, I'm not sure about that. No.
Anything with government's name in it, that just gets a bad rap.
It does. It does.
That's understandable. Yeah. So let's just go up above another level, and that's just the payments in general in the United States versus other countries or other continents, if you will, like Asia Pacific or Middle East or European payments. We have a feeling that they adopt much more faster and quicker. I can give you an example of what happened in India with the UPI, and street hawkers are able to use QR codes and get those instant payments right away, right? So it just brought in so many of this this lower level street hawkers. In a sense, when I say lower level, it used to be cash transactions earlier. It's in pennies, and they're able to get these transactions so quicker, and every street hawker has got a QR code. So that's an example. But why is the United States generally behind when it comes to payments?
Well, I have my theories, and I've done some research by going to certain places. I haven't made it to India. If you want to take me over there, I'll be glad to go. I also haven't made it, anywhere else in Asia or South America. But I want to give an example of South America, which would be Brazil. And they have a system called PIX, P-I-X, which is, I'm watching closely because it's blowing my mind, the adoption rate. It's blowing my mind, the money that the financial institutions are saving. There was an article recently that showed PIX has outdone credit and debit card activity combined in less than 3 years. But here's the thing. This is the difference between them and the US. PIX was mandated by the government. The government got involved and said, you have to use this. You're a financial institution. You have to be on this network. You have to offer it. So they made it available to everybody. And to me, everywhere you look, the instant payments, like you mentioned, UPI in India, there's other places, we have seen huge success once they're available. So what's happening here in the US is, first of all, we are so late to the game. People don't even realize that. They don't realize that there's 50 plus other countries that are offering this and have been offering this for years, again, with huge success. We're just now, in July 2023, getting it from the Fed. It's been available from the clearinghouse and the RTP network, though, since late 2017. So it's been around, just not getting the high usage. And I think what we're having a problem with is we won't get rid of older payment systems. We don't mandate any type of use. And there's a huge competition in the private sector. People think sending money, and like you mentioned, Zelle, or you see Venmo, or you see Cash App, or you see PayPal. You see a lot of, in many cases, non-banking apps that are used that don't come with the same safety or security or backing from the government that are in our regular payment channels. So we have option overload to begin with. We have what is popular or hip amongst the cool kids that is being used from the downloaded app store. There's also the Apple Pays, the Google Pays, the Samsung Pay, the anything you want pays that are out there and available. And it's just so much competition, so much friction that's out there that I think that's slowing down some of the adoption and the previously mentioned misinformation. However, I do believe we're going to see a change soon, and I think we'll see it quickly. There's data actually from Bank of America to support this. Bank of America recently put out some data showing that Zelle, which most people believe to be instant payments, not always, but they appear at least that way, Zelle transactions being sent have exceeded the number of checks being written, at least within Bank of America. That's a huge statistic to look at. That's a huge indicator to show that, wait a minute, these faster payment systems are actually doing something.
Got it. You mentioned the younger public. They're using, the Venmos of the world, if you will, and then the parents are using Zelle and maybe Checkstra, right? But we're seeing the metaverse and the new Apple product, the Apple Vision Pro, and all of that. Do you think the idea of making payments using metaverse or this Apple Vision Pro, that's going to change the way younger people make payments or see the idea of what payments are?
I think it already has happened. See, one of the things when I think metaverse is it's really just an expanded virtual reality. It's just an expanded online experience, which many of us have had. Like I go realize I went from playing little racing games on handholds, when I was younger, to suddenly I'm playing it on an Xbox, to now I got the racing simulator, with the big go around, and I can put on a headset if I want, and I can be more in a metaverse type situation. But the payment's always been the same. Once I got connected to the internet and I wanted to make those purchases, the payments were all the same. But what I have seen with the younger generation is, like, I can compare a couple of my kids. I have a son who's 30 now. Oh my gosh, it still hurts to say that. He's 30. And I remember when he was younger and he got a check And when he got that check, he immediately went to the bank of dad and said, Dad, let's convert this over to cash. His preferred form of instant payment at that time. Now he's all about the Venmos and Zelles himself. Well,
Sure.
then I've got a 13-year-old. Now my 13-year-old, you hand him a check and he's going to be like, what is this? You hand him cash, and I kid you not, or if I even use cash when we're out in public, he's like, Dad, you're not helping the instant payment revolution. Put that away. It's electronic payments, no cash. He just doesn't see it that way. To him, everything should be electronic. Everything should be on his phone. He doesn't want to carry anything physical other than his phone. And I believe that is common amongst a lot of the younger generations nowadays. And heck, I'm guilty.
And with the Vision Pro, I wanted to ask you specifically about that, because I see that as one of the groundbreaking devices that's coming in, right? That's going to keep you glued into that, because you can do a lot of things with that just by having that on. So do you think it's going to help with making the payment modernization quicker? But
I don't know if it'll make it quicker. I definitely see where it will become a segment of the industry that we will monitor separately, because I haven't used Apple's device yet. I'm afraid to, because I know as soon as I use one, I'll have to buy one, and they're a little pricey in my opinion. Now, I have used like the Quest 2s, the Facebook devices that are out there. And in fact, one of the things that surprised me with my son when we got it is one of his favorite games to play is called Job Simulator, where he goes in and he simulates, making coffee and copies of things in this weird environment. But he's got to purchase the add-on. So he definitely wants to be able to do that. I do see the metaverse growing, especially when it comes to training opportunities, when it comes to educational opportunities. And I definitely can see where we're going to see a sector or a segment of payments that are done directly in there. And I truly do believe it will be more of the instant type of payment because, well, first of all, I want to see the money come out of my account right away. I don't want to wait for it to come out and, make a budgeting error. But on the other side, as somebody, like paymentsprofessor.com, I sell things. I want that money to come in right away too, so that, I know once I've sold something, things have been sold and the payment is there. So I do believe that metaverse environment will have more of that. I really hope too that in that metaverse environment, maybe I need to work on this. We have something that gives more education, financial literacy and financial health type education to those users so that they can go in there and they can understand what happens when they make a purchase. They can learn more about savings, interest rates, about FDIC, NCUA type insurance and protections that are out there to be able to help them, and what true benefits credit unions and banks can bring to them. And I think that would be great. I almost wish that before they can make a purchase, they were required to get educated a little bit more on what happens and how it works.
Financial literacy, that's very important. I do see that as some of the courses in middle school and all that. So I'm glad my son's in middle school and he's going through the financial literacy courses, and I'm sure that he's going to be much more literate than when I was at that, what I was at that age. So going to this account receivables, right? So that's always been really slow. The B2B sort of a thing, especially AR, right? So are you foreseeing any revolution in that field to make things quicker, if you will?
Oh, yes. In fact, it's funny when I talk about instant payments, I talk about FedNow. Most people immediately go to it's going to be P2P payments and that type of exchange. And don't get me wrong, there'll be some activity there, but I really believe the true revolution that we are going to see take place in payments will be with what we call request for payment, an RFP. An RFP, a request for payment, removes debits and causes it to be where now a business to another business or a business to a consumer or a consumer to a consumer can send a request for somebody to reply by sending money instead of just having their account debited. And they can do partial payments. They can choose. They got more control over the payment. Now, the thing is where this is big for businesses, for business to business payments, is a lot of their friction, a lot of their issues exist in, first of all, the remittance data, the additional information, the reconciling it back to an invoice that, hey, this is supposed to pay for this. That has been a nightmare forever for businesses to know whose money is this, where did it come from, what's it go to. And I do believe that using the ISO 20022 formatting system with a request for payments, especially, that there'll be the additional information transmitted in more transparent, easy to use ways to improve the AP, accounts payable, AR, accounts receivable systems for this. Something else, though, traditionally, the businesses, they do, like we mentioned before, they want to hold on to the money as long as they can.
Oh, yeah.
And instant payments give them that ability to actually hold on to it a little longer. But then once it's sent, it's not like the check's in the mail and you should get it in a week and then be able to deposit it 3 days later. No, it would be, hey, here you go, instant payment. You got it right now. And I do believe, too, it will make it to where businesses can say, I know you're waiting to pay that bill as long as you want, but I'll give you a 10% discount if you'll pay it right now. And suddenly they'll be able to do that. Whereas, and I know those incentives already exist. Don't get me wrong. I already know they already exist. But I think it'll be much more appealing to businesses and they'll get a little bit more creative when how it will be used. In fact, I truly believe, too, we don't even know exactly how this is going to work because the ideas and the things that are going to be used are some just theory right now, but they've yet to even be created, and they will happen as the payment system evolves.
Gotcha. Good. I know you also talk about alternative payments. That's one of the things that interests you. Could you give us an idea of what those are?
Well, alternative payments in many ways are just finding new options and alternatives for how payments can be made. I really look at that more nowadays as being more like, say, embedded payments. And that is where your payment is embedded into devices and things you're already using. Like we mentioned the metaverse, if you got one of the headsets and you embed the payment into that universe itself. Or cars are becoming popular with this now. In fact, I read an article this morning, Hyundai is coming out with an embedded payment within some of their models in 2024. I know Mercedes already has it embedded in some of their systems too, to make it easier to be able to make the payments. A lot of people are getting away from the cards themselves and going to, tap to pay type of devices where you can have a ring or a keychain or something like that you can use in place of your tap to pay. So it's really, to me, an alternative payment is an evolution of payments, and it's finding alternatives to the classic ways we've expected to be able to make payments to really simplify the process for people.
So explain to us why someone would use their card as a way of making payments when everything is being done with your phone and it's all stored on your phone, Apple Cash, well, whatever, everything is connected through your phone. What are the situations where somebody's making a payment through a card, and will it become like how the earliest card phones were? Remember we had phones in the car. I tell that to my kids.
And the trunk was full of batteries to power that phone. Yes.
Yes. So you think it's gonna go the way of car phones, this car payment?
Well, I think more of it like your phone now, your smartphone now. There's apps that you like to download and use for your phone, right? Sure. Well, cars are getting to this point too, where there are apps, features, functionality that you can download and install to your car. Tesla's well known for this, to where you could, you've got the base model, but you want to add in some additional features or new features become available, you purchase those and you install them. So that's one way right there. And of course, it'll already be tied to your account, so you can just hit install and charge me. Another thing is, especially with GPS capabilities, now it's something you can turn off, don't get me wrong, but you can have it on to where, hey, I need gas. In fact, this is one of the things I saw in the Hyundai system is I need gas. Where can I get gas? Oh, my Hyundai now, ironically, I have one, shows me everywhere where I can get gas and what the price is, but I got to pay for it when I get to the pump. Instead, if we embed that payment in there, I'll be able to go, there's the cheapest gas. Let me go ahead and tie it to my account, pull up, start pumping gas, put everything back, and the payment takes place automatically for me.
Okay. I see what it is, because I can I use the Spotify app in my car, and I can just control it right there instead of taking my phone. And the user interface is kind of similar, so you're not going to learn. This is not much of a learning curve, but it's the convenience.
Yes.
So I understand what you're saying. Thanks for explaining that to us. The other thing that I was looking at is AI, and AI as well as the generative AI as well. Can you tell us some of the use cases with AI and Gen AI?
All right, I'm a huge fan of AI. I know some people are terrified from it. I do see the scary side too. And in fact, I had a podcast with a friend of mine from Switzerland, Dr. Bobby Romenkemper, and he is a PhD in AI and banking. All right. And he explained that some of the best use cases we're going to see with AI have to do with fraud prevention. Fraud is one of the biggest topics that we are facing when it comes to, payments and money. If there's money involved, there'll always be fraud. Don't get me wrong. But the AI is being used against us right now, to where, the bad guys are using AI to impersonate people or to trick us into sending funds, or better phishing schemes, I should say, than they used to be. But the AI can also be used to prevent those, to be able to detect those, to be able to see things before they happen, to be more predictive of what's going to happen that our human brains aren't yet capable of. But we're capable of designing programs that can do that. AI also is starting to show up to where it can improve the customer service experience, to where it can look and see that, here's the products, here's the services, and how you would best use them, by being able to look at previous data and look at trends of what is happening, to be able to further aid people in getting to a lot of their financial and even life goals or business goals.
Yeah. And what about Gen AI, generative AI, chat GPTs of the world, if you will? Are you seeing any use cases of that within the systems?
Yes, I do know. It's funny. I've recently had a conversation with a couple of different banks that were on both sides. One was totally against it and like, we're not going to use that. The other one was using it and using it effectively. And I said, well, what are you using it for? And they said, well, we actually use it more for customer service than anything. And I went, well, how's that? And they go, well, we write up replies to people and we put it in the AI to see, we'll ask it, hey, is it really answering this question? Is there a better way that this could be said? Or we'll take some of the responses that come in and be like, what is a better way to be able to reply this? What is the person actually asking for? Or I've seen it in cases too, where they'll have their, instruction sheet for how to do something, like say, fill out a loan. And a person told me, we put our loan instructions in there and we said, AI, is there a better way to do this? And said, AI almost started laughing at us and said, there's a million better ways to do this. But it gave responses to be able to say, here you go. Why not list it this way? Why not say it this way? Why not move the steps around that this makes more, say, logical sense or improves the customer experience? So yes, there are a lot of different ways it can be used. I have to add, though, whenever I talk about using the generative AI, which I am a user, I'm a fan of, you cannot take the human aspect out of it. And by that, I mean, you better proofread, you better go through everything that it spits out back to you, because it's only as recent as its most recent upgrade. A great example, you ask it about FedNow right now, and its data is only current as of 2021. It'll tell you that. If you ask it, it'll say, hey, how current is your data? And it's only current as of 2021, and that's way outdated. So be wary, but I'm a fan. I think it's a new frontier that we will see much more of in the industry, in the world.
Excellent. Yeah. No, that I truly believe that we've just scratched the surface when it comes to the use cases of generative AI, and it's just going to explode in future. The other thing I was looking at, and you've been talking about some of the advances already with the request to pay and metaverse and all of that, but is there a new revolution coming up within the payments industry that you think is going to revolutionize, the payments?
Well, it is actually request for pay. It really is going to be request for pay. And the reason being is it's going to revolutionize bill payment. Getting the bills in the mail, that's expensive. Companies spend
That is.
so much money in sending out those paper bills or processing those paper checks. And request for pay will just eliminate a lot of those costs, speed up the process, make it much more efficient than ever before. And so I really, truly believe we'll see a revolution take place in the bill payment sector.
Excellent. So yeah, so those are the questions that I had. And I know we want to meet again and then actually go into some of the other deeper topics, like the fraud protection, and also the faster payments is always close to my heart because it's so slow at the moment, right? So we can go into more deeper topics in our next podcast. But Kevin, thank you very much for helping us with this as a first primer, if you will, on some of the very generic topics, and that's like a 30,000-foot view. In subsequent ones, we're going to go in much more deeper. But
Excellent.
I appreciate all the answers succinctly. I thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you.